This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, you
Well,
ready to go, Ken?
yeah, let's get going. So hello, everyone. My name is Ken Quigley from Keystroke. And today we're going to be introducing Link2Forms. Link2Forms is the latest product in our Linktivity product suite. First came Link2Calendar, which allows people to put a link in their email signature or on social media or their website where people can click on it and book an appointment with them based on what is displayed as their availability. The next one was Link2Events, which allowed you to manage and organize events, create sign-up forms, and have all the results integrated in with ACT. And now we're on Link2Forms, which is a tool for creating online forms and online surveys and having all the results integrated with ACT. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through that today. Just a brief little history though. You'll notice here the product tiles. On this, I'll say book 2. And that's because initially the calendar product was called Book to Act, and it was fine for that. And then when we came up with events, we thought, okay, well, the whole Book 2 concept is still relevant. But by the time we got to forms, it didn't make sense anymore, and the whole naming convention became a little bit strained. And next month, we're going to be releasing what's called Link2Quotes. And so once we got into that, we realized, okay, this was the time to really go through the rebranding. So expect to see some updated tiles here soon. Okay, but that's a little bit of history. So with the product suite, what are we looking to do? We're, right now, one of the secret weapons, and this is a marketing campaign we've been pushing, one of the secret weapons of ACT subscription is the API. The problem is very, very few people use it because there isn't really a large, a selection of tools or add-ons that work with it. But the reality is that it is an incredibly powerful, fast way of getting to the data. Okay, and I'm just going to briefly show you here. If you go to blog, you can read a little bit about here. The ACT Web API connects you with your data and your customers. And I'm certainly not going to go through this, but you can kind of see where the ACT API plays a role. And I've wrote it in more business terms than technical terms. So hopefully it resonates with you and you guys can understand why we're trying to add, extra tools to leverage such powerful technology. Okay, because truthfully, we've seen over the last few years, we've seen SwiftPage really invest heavily in first ACT Premium Cloud and now ACT CRM SaaS. And these are platforms that are largely browser-based. Well, SaaS is completely browser-based. So the conventional ACT add-ons that you installed don't work anymore. Okay, they're not really, there isn't, most people aren't installing, certainly most new users are not installing the ACT software anymore. So we've built these API tools that work with ACT Premium Cloud, they work with ACT Desktop, and they work with ACT SaaS. So, not only is it the most practical way to build add-ons because it's got the widest possible market, but we also think it's the coolest technology. And I'm looking forward to showing you guys how fast and well it works. Okay, so the first thing, getting back to the Linktivity suite, the thing to do is to log in. Now, if I don't want anyone having to worry about, taking notes or having to memorize anything, you can learn what you want on here, but also on our website. If you go to Programs and Linktivity Products, you'll see a full page on calendar, events, forms, complete with all the feature breakdowns, screenshots, things like that. Okay, so back to this. So I'm just going to click on my account and it's going to pop up here for the login. I'm going to click on login. Okay, and here is the initial homepage that you're presented with when you first log in. Now, what you see here immediately at the top is my subscription. Now, obviously, our internal subscription is going to be for a few years, but now you can see the 4 different products that you can click on the icon and see just understand what the workflow is. And there's no point in talking about programs if people, don't understand how the things work. We're going to go into real detail today and generate real live examples. But this, if you click on Link to Calendar, you can see what's the workflow. What do I have to do to set this up? Link to Events, the same kind of thing. What do I have to do to set it up? We've added a ton of documentation in here so that people can kind of better understand. And you'll notice that as we go through this, that a lot of the documentation is very contextual. It's, the help buttons are specific to the area that you're in. It will display only relevant information, okay? So the next one is the Act Web API. Now the Act Web API, if you're a hosted customer, it's not the same URL that you use to log in with. It's a completely different address. If you don't know what that is, there's several ways of finding out. We've published several tools here. If you go to Act Services and then KQC Customer Tools, down at the bottom, you've got the SaaS API utility. Now, what is that? Basically, if you're a SaaS customer, you enter in your username, password, and database name and click on Submit, and then it will display, if your credentials are accurate, what your API URL is, okay? And you can use that for any of the Linktivity tools or any of the API add-ons, okay? The other one is if you think you know your like, let's say you think you've been told and you're trying to find out, whether or not it works, then you can go here and say the API master. Okay, and just enter in your username, password, database name, and the URL as they've been told you. You click on that, and it will tell you whether or not they're accurate. And if you get a green light on this, then you know that you've got the settings to enter in back over here. Okay, the last one, if you're hosted by Keystroke, we've got a real easy page for you. Click on here, go down to the bottom, and we actually have an API list, so you can cross-reference whether or not you're hosted in Canada or the United States, check your version number, and it will tell you what the URL is. Okay, nice and simple. So with that information, we're going to go back and we know what to enter in here. Database name is database name, whatever it is in your case, and then the username and password. Now, you've got to click on enter in if you're a new user, enter in the password, click on save, and then test connection, and then that password will be blanked out after that, and it will indicate whether or not it's worked. The next one is general settings. Now, this is pretty much what it implies, okay? It's settings that apply to everything. Now, I've used this image as my calendar image, okay, because I want it to be, a little personalized, but here's the details that are important. So Ken Quigley is the name that will be surfaced when it's talking about my calendar and any other area that it's looking to display my name, okay? Then it's gonna pull it from this field. The primary email address, why is this important? Well, the calendar feature, okay, up here, which we're not going to really discuss today, but the calendar feature includes an ICS file after you book an appointment. And anytime that you have any kind of calendar file or invite file, there has to be a source account that's associated with. So this is where it's pulled in. So when you accept it, then it will, your system, your Outlook or whatever CRM, if you're whatever organizer or CRM you're using, then it will know that it's linked to ken@kqc.ca, okay? And then here's the image that, in my case, will be the default, okay? And then the calendar settings, very simple. What time zone are you in, and what is your date format? Now, for any Americans, this may seem, a little curious because the date format for the United States is month, day, year, whereas in most Commonwealth nations, it's big, bigger, biggest, starting with day, month, year, okay? Manage subscriptions, this is strictly the commercial part where you actually add subscriptions. So all you've got to do is go in here, click on add new subscription, and you go under whichever section you're subscribing to. Now, the good news is that once we release Link2Forms, which is going to be in the first week of the new year, if you subscribe to Link2Events and Link2Forms, and I'm not going to create false suspense, let me explain to you what the costs are. Link2Events is $80, Link2Forms is $120. Okay, so $10 a month, $667 a month, and then Link to Calendar is $5 a month, so for $60. Okay, if you get Link to Events and Link to Forms, you'll get Link to Calendar free. Okay, so $200 will buy you $260 worth of applications. And each one of these things are like huge savings. I'll get into some of the commercial benefits later, but this is where you add the subscriptions. So I'm going to skip over calendar events and go straight to forms. And one of the first things that you're going to notice is there is a bunch of new forms here, or some bunch of forms that I've created. And what we're going to do is we're going to edit the quote request. But what I want to do is when we're done, I'm going to show you some of the submissions and how some of the data that you get from people displays. So, you know, it provides really, really powerful and cool reporting. We're going to go through that. And so we're going to show you the Keystroke COPA nominations, which was an internal thing where we were getting everyone's input on who should win each one of the departmental awards. Okay, so with that, we're going to go down to the quote request. Now, you can obviously see here that this first column indicates that all of these are enabled. You can go in and edit this and disable them if you're not using them, or you want to just stop submissions. Then the next here is the form name, and then here's all the different icons in terms of the action icons. So here, if you want to just quickly get a link and then paste it in someplace, so you want to add it to your signature, you want to add it to social media, to your website, or you want to email out something, then why drill into it when you can just quickly click on this and it will copy it to your clipboard. Okay, this duplicate one here, the duplicate form, in many cases, especially where you're dealing with lead generation forms. And let me just pause and just explain the main two types of forms that you can create. The first one is the most commonly understood, which is like a standard form. Those forms typically contain very few questions, but they contain mostly fields. So they'll have all the address and the contact information. And those would be used for things like quote request forms, or add me to your newsletter list, or, you know, follow-up forms, things like that. And when they add that in, okay, and they fill out all those fields, there's no questions to answer, then, you know, they click on submit, and it will automatically add that person to your database if they're not recognized. Okay, and if they are recognized, then we'll put a history indicating all updates, because maybe someone is updating their mailing address information. The point of the story is that if you create those kinds of forms, then it might be easier to just duplicate it and give it a different name, okay, rather than creating it from scratch. That's the first type. The second type is surveys. So surveys, you're going to use very few fields because you don't want people jumping through a bunch of hoops before they answer the questions you want them to answer. So you might put in things like contact name, email, and phone number, and that's it. So just give them the bare minimum, okay? You always want to have email, because as we're going to show you, that is what any of the Link2 products check your database for, to see if that contact is already in your database or is going to be unique to the database now, okay? So that's why you'd use the duplicate form. And then this is the edit, which we'll use shortly. And then here is the view form. And basically what this is, it's copying to the clipboard, and then it's bringing you to it. So let me just show you what this will shows. Okay, so you can see this is very, very basic. We're going to be adding some meat to the bones here. So this is a quote request, and I'm going to add some extra fields. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into and then the last button, by the way, here is reports. And I'm going to show you that later with real data. Right now, we don't have any data on this because we haven't got anyone, you know, creating, or we haven't even really published this. Okay, so I'm going to go into edit. Now, whenever you click on edit, expect, you know, between 5 and 10 seconds latency, because when you're clicking on edit, what it's doing is it's actually logging into your API account, which means logging into your database. So that the first time that you click on it, it's got to make that connection. Okay, so it's going to be a little delayed. So let's go through some of the options. The very top, very obvious ones, we've got save and close, cancel, preview, which is really useful because as we're designing it, we can, you know, check on this to see, you know, what the results are, okay, of our formatting. And then view submissions, if we're in it and we want to test what you know, whether or not we've recorded a submission, then we can click on here, and it will bring you to basically the results page, which is going to include all the reports that we discussed earlier. Okay, now as promised, you can see the little contextual help here. and it breaks down things under the general settings. Okay, so first checkbox is it enabled? Of course. Now, make history private. Why would we do this? Well, in the case that we're going to show you later, I was circulating an internal survey asking for people to provide their opinions on who should win each award. Well, this is being written to history for each one of the contacts, which is visible to all the users. So I wanted it to be private, okay, so that only I, as the record manager, can see the results. And I didn't want someone looking in and saying, oh, such and such didn't want me to win the top departmental award. So we just thought, let's build that feature in so that people can use it internally as well. Hide the form footer. Okay, form footer is very simple. You can see here there isn't one. Okay, if I was to say clear this and save, I go back. Now you can see it's got a footer. Okay, now in cases where you're just having a pop-up page or it's a dedicated page, then footer, no footer, that's up to you. Okay, we're not putting it in there to promote it. It's just the standard part of the way that it's laid out. However, if you're incorporating a form into a page, then maybe you want to have it as white labeled as possible and not have a footer that may not be, in step with the theme of the page. Okay, so we give you the option to remove that. So I'm going to go back to that. Now, prevent multiple submissions. Now, in the case where I was soliciting people's opinion on who should win each department, obviously the results would be skewed if I had one person submitting like 15 votes. Okay, so in those kinds of cases where we're having a ballot or soliciting people's opinions that are going to be reported on, then we want to have the option to prevent people from writing in just multiple submissions. Okay, now the form name is what was carried forward when we first created it. When you first clicked on new, it just asks you what the name is, and then it will come forward into this screen. Okay, now this is what the URL looks like that is being generated, okay, for your specific either form or survey. Now you click here, you can see it. Now the problem is there is no earthly way anyone is going to ever remember this. And if you want to have it something that's a little bit more human friendly, then we built in this option of a custom URL, okay? So in this case, what we're going to call it is quote request. Now you cannot use, invalid characters like special characters and things like that. So you may want to just use uppercase. You can't put underscores or things like that. But watch what this does. You click on validate. This entered custom URL is available. Please save and generate this new custom URL. So now this is it. I'm going to click on save and watch what happens to this. Okay, now the form is called forms.linktivity.net/quote request. Much easier to remember. So, and certainly a lot shorter. I still recommend obviously using HTML references. So you say click here and then have the link behind it. But even for your own sanity, this is a lot easier to remember. Okay, so we built in this custom URL generator. The color code is for the background. In most cases, we're going to recommend that you use white, but you've got the flexibility to have different codes. I mean, obviously, be mindful of not having anything too bright, because it'll be hard for people to even read it. Okay, but we give you this option if you want to incorporate a form into a page that already has a certain background theme. Okay, now horizontal margin, what does that mean? Well, take a look at this. You can see that this is pretty tight to the margin. Now, let's say, and also you can see that it's full page width. So let's say that I want to indent it 10%, click on save, and you can see how it indents a little bit on each side, okay? Now, let's say that I want to actually set the form width because I'm going to insert this into a page on my website, or I want to have it as part of a pop-up. And I know the pop-up is going to be, let's say, 800 pixels wide. So I'm going to put in 800. Now, what you'll find is, as you play with this, that the shorter the width, the less you're going to want to use margins. Okay, so now let's go here and let's see what this looks like. Okay, so now it's much, much smaller. So in this case, I'm actually going to reduce this down to 0. Save. Go back. Okay, and it's a little friendlier. Okay, so now I've got this, I've got the formatting. Now, so what is the column size? By default, it supports 2 columns. If it's a simple form where you're just asking people's address information, contact information, then use 1. Okay, it's much easier on mobile. It's just a simple thing, and people can just type and just advance down through it, click on OK, and you're done. Okay, but I'm going to put in some questions. So I want to have it 2 columns wide. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't have fields that span the full width, and we're going to show you that. But I wanted to, show you that, and you can go up to as many columns wide as possible. But just be mindful. If you have like 10, it's going to be almost impossible to read on smaller devices. Okay. Now, this introductory text is just that. Many times you'll have a form that will require some kind of introduction, rather than just here's a form, fill in some fields. This will allow you to have some kind of text to kind of explain what the purpose of the survey or the form is. And I actually really strongly recommend it, okay? And as you'll see on the form, it's going to center justify both the title and the text. And it's got, as you can see here, I was just about to point to a screen, which is really good on a webinar. It indicates you've got a 400 character limit. So I'm going to say, this is a test of intro text for this webinar. Okay, I have to remember to go back and clean that up later. Now, the last thing is the logo. You saw that there was a logo under general settings, but we presume that you're going to have form and event specific branding. Okay, so in this case, we put our little Clem here, our mascot with a calculator. We put it in. Now, if you put in an image that's too large, it will reduce it down to 800 pixels wide. This guy is kind of, well, he's not square, but his dimensions are square, as wide as he is tall. We actually recommend landscape images, okay, that are much wider, okay, than they are tall. So you can see 800 pixels to 100 pixels, really centers and displays better on the forms, okay? So the next one, just inadvertently clicked on that, go to the field mapping. Now, in this case, okay, you don't have to worry about things being required if they're not enabled. Here's all the field selections. You're not able to add custom fields because really the form generations is meant to capture the basic contact fields, okay? And the way that the survey questions are handled is it's written to history. So we didn't want to create any kind of false expectations of how the data is stored, and we didn't want people writing all the data to it, okay? So if you disable these fields, don't worry about required, but if you've got all of them enabled, I strongly recommend do not have address 3 and address 2 enabled as required, because it'll just irritate people. Okay, they'll have to put in ones or something like that. So just be mindful of this. But in this case, because what we're doing is it's a quote request, we're not looking for contact information. We want people to enter in what they're asking for very quickly, and we just need the standard contact information. So we've kept that down to a minimum. So now the next one is questions. Okay, so we've got no questions here. So we're actually going to make up some questions. Now, quote request is very standard. So I'm just going to put in new question. Now, at this point, what product or service are you interested in? Okay. Now, at this point, we've got the different kinds of questions available. Single line text is just exactly that, free form text that you enter in. Open-ended is more of a memo field, okay? And this is what you would use for opinions, things like that. These things are not reportable, Okay, anything that's free-form text you cannot report, because you would presume in most cases everyone's answers are going to be different, which is going to produce pretty useless reporting. Drop down. You don't have to worry about drop down, multi-select or whatever. We can configure that later. And then star rating, I'm going to show you that on another form, but basically that's useful for grading something. Slider ranking is exactly that, and I'll show you that in another form. And you can actually slide something to say, I strongly agree with something or I strongly disagree with something. It's a question of that format, a very, very friendly way of expressing your opinion. And then we've got number. Checkbox is exactly that, good for yes/no questions. And then empty space. Empty space, I'm going to show you while we're doing this, is really a formatting tool where if you want to, because basically with all the questions that you enter in, if you've got 2 columns, it's going to enter in and plot each of the questions in sequence. But if you want to push down the next question to the next line and leave a space, we've provided that ability, okay? So in this case, I'm going to select drop down. I'm going to create the question, okay? So it's enabled, yes. Question required, of course it is. What's the point of having a quote request if we can't get people's answers? In this case, I'm actually going to say I want it to span both columns. And here, is what we call a field hint, and it's very, very useful, especially for the sliders where you're trying to say, 1 is strongly disagree, 10 is strongly agree, or even if you want to kind of just guide people towards what you're looking for, okay? And then here's the multi-select that I was telling you about. So in this case, I'm going to say Act CRM, hosting, marketing automation, website design, and let's give one other thing. We'll say SEO/SEM, and I'll actually just put in service, technical service, or technical support. Okay, now because there's a chance that people will want more than one, I'm going to enable multi-select, and then I'm going to save the question. And the moment that I save the question, you're going to see a new set of options that automatically display here. So one is edit, trash bin is to delete. And then if you want to create a question that's similar, okay, let's say similar has similar drop downs, things like that, then you can just duplicate it. And here is where sorting order, okay? So now the next one is going to be, let's say, of a response would you like? Okay, I'm going to say drop down, create question, and we're going to say required, and we're just going to say same day, same week, and let's say same month, and just leave it at that. Okay, obviously multi-select doesn't apply. Next one thing I want to find out, are they existing customers of ours? So what we're going to say is, are you an existing keystroke customer? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the checkbox, make it nice and simple for people to record, okay? And there's really not much to do there, okay? And the last thing, I'm going to use the 2 other type of, I'm going to obviously edit this afterwards, but I want to demonstrate the different question types. So I'm going to say, rank your love for ACT. Okay, and I'm going to say star rating, and I'm going to be 1 out of 5, and 1 column is enough. And then the last one, I'm going to be as a slider. Okay. How would you rate your, let's say, Act is the best CRM on the market for the price. Okay. And I'm going to put in slider. And we're going to say 2 columns. And in this case, I'm going to say, okay. And we'll say 1 strongly agree, 10 strongly disagree. Okay, I had that in there already. And put in question required. Now we're going to go to the back and we're going to click on save. So let's take a look at our form. I can click on preview or I can click on here, but let's click on preview. Okay. So now I have a formatted question, a formatted thing, pretty helpful. The one thing I'm going to say is on a question like this, you're definitely going to want to have a free form field so that people can just put in whatever details they want. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to put in new question, general comments. I'm going to put in open-ended. I'm not going to make it required. I never recommend making a comment section required, okay, because people may not have comments. They may just want to have actions. And then you just click on here. It will automatically go to the bottom. Now, when we go here, okay, we're going to see it automatically displayed here. So here's a really nice, simple form that's laid out just the way we like it, okay? Now, let's say I want to have the star up here, okay? Then what you can do is go to rank your love of act, push it up, click on save, and now it's up there, okay? Now, why would I use a spacer? Well, let's say that you wanted to add emphasis here and drop this down a little bit more. Then what you can do is put in new question and say spacer, empty space, call it a spacer, call it anything you like, really. Okay, do it 2. Don't worry that the field label is not going to come across. And then we're going to want to put it above the general comments and then save. And then go back here. And now you can see we've added a little bit of extra space. So it's just like a little formatting tool. If I didn't want, here's a better example. Let's say that I didn't want to have anything in this section, okay? Then how fast of a response would you like? By the way, this is what it looks like. Then what I can do is I can put a spacer right after this and it would force this item down into here, okay? Which might look a little bit better. So I've got a spacer here. I don't want to create another one. So I just click on duplicate, okay? Copy of spacer, I don't care what it's called. And I think just one above that. And now, okay, I think I missed. How fast? Oh, that's right. It's got to be how fast here. And what that will do is that will put a space right here, so these 2 things will drop down. See? Okay. And that's how you work it. And it's, you know, oh, actually what I did remember is that this spacer, okay, let's go into edit the spacer. I want to have 1 column wide. Okay, so nice and simple. And that's how you can create a form, okay? And then let's actually see what that looks like in the website. So I already had this here. So we scroll down And here is our quote request. Okay, and that's how it looks. Now, you see here where I don't mind the elevator bar, but I don't want a horizontal bar. Okay, now this is 800 pixels wide. So what I would do is I would go back to general and I would say, let's make it 780 or 785. Okay, save, go back here, do a refresh, scroll down, and let's go to the quote request. No, wasn't enough. I'd have to tuck it in a little bit more, but we're pretty much there, and it all fits within one frame. Okay, and that's how you can insert it into your website, either as a pop-up. We call these a Liddy open or a Lighthouse open, or whatever other format you're using, whether it's an iframe. And we've got some suggested code for inserting it in there. Okay, now let's go back and let's see what the results actually look like. So I'm going to go back to the COPA nominations. Okay, and we're going to go in here. Now, here's where you can see, I'll go through, the questions here. This was more of almost like an election, okay, where we asked people to vote for all the different people for different departments. So now, if I click on, if I go to preview, oops, oh yeah, I think, let me go to view submissions. Okay, so harvesting data without having meaningful ways of analyzing it is kind of pointless. So what we do is we've provided 5 different formats that you can analyze the data with. So the first one is where it analyzes all the data by submission, by the person that is submitting the information. The useful thing about that is, remember I said that you can't really report on free-form text fields like the single line text or the memo? Well, this allows you to actually see the data in a non-graph format, and you can export it to Excel, to CSV, to PDF, whichever, but now you can see everyone's responses, okay? Even if it's non-reportable. So this is kind of useful for kind of going through and analyzing all the data. Then what you can do is, if you want to, just quickly analyze what's the general feeling, or look up, how some people responded. Let's say, here's one question: how many power drinks does Billy consume? You're going to hear from Billy in a few minutes, and I'm going to click on filter by row, and I'm going to say, I bet most people thought 5. Oh, only 1. Okay, so let's see how many people thought 10. Ooh, yeah, people have a lot of concern about Billy's power drink consumption. So you can see that the majority of people thought that he had at least 10, okay? But this is a nice way of really harvesting the data and massaging the data. So the next one is, let's review the winners, okay? So the winners in this case, okay, we had actually quite a few non-responses here. So that was a little bit misleading, but let's go to the summary, which actually gives you a breakdown of, remember how the first one was all the responses by the people that submitted? Now here's all the responses based on per question. So we can see here that we've got 8 people here voting for Courtney, and maybe 4 people here. We got a tie here, okay? And kind of break down and see all the results this way, okay? And even if I wanted to see, let's see, I think I don't know where the Billy question went. Okay, here we got that. Now the next one is a pie chart. Now, as you can see, still got all the same export options, but let's see it a little bit more graphically. Okay, so now we've got all the results here, and nice, easy to understand. And if you want to see the graphs from the other ones, you can either toggle, okay, or you can select which question from this pick list. Now, if you're wondering what question is what number, we've ordered that for you here. So I want to see Eager Beaver. Okay, I could see all the results there. Okay, if I want to see number 6, okay, then I can see here the responses. Okay, And this allows me to really analyze the data in a quick and easy way. Now I can print off the results. I can go to full page if I want here, okay? I can print the page, and then I can also export to PDF, XLS, any of these things, but here's something that's new. I can actually export to image. So let's see what that looks like. In this case, I get all the graphs at once. Now you can expand this, of course, okay, but I get all the graphs at once in one report, and you can send that off to who's ever interested, okay? And the last one is the pie chart, okay? The same kind of things. You can toggle back and forth to all the different results, okay? And the one thing I omitted to mention, and remember I said there's two different kinds of forms that you can have, the basic data form and then the survey results. Well, if you have something like a quote request form that's out there for a long, long time, and you want to see the results from this month, then we have a date filter as well. Okay, so you can actually filter and show the data for a specific date range. So, that allows you to kind of narrow down the data to something that's a little bit more relevant than just, show me all the submissions for all the time, which, you may have already acted on a long time previously. Okay, so those are the reports. Okay, the thing that I'm sure that at this point you're like, okay, this is great, this does a lot. I can use it for getting, I can use it for balloting, I can use it for surveys, I can use it for general quote requests, things like that, newsletter submissions. But what does this cost? Well, we want this to be as widely used as possible. Let's remember what the objective here is to unleash the secret weapon of subscription, okay, which is leveraging the API. And so we've made this as inexpensive as possible. So since most companies are only going to need one of these per account, we're charging only $10 a month for this, so paid annually at $120 a year, okay? Now, that is all the mechanics. Let's actually see how fast this works, okay? So I'm gonna go back to my forms, and I just want to bring over a page here. So here is the quote request page. I've made this form a couple of times. So whenever you create a form or a survey or even an event with our link to events, it will create a corresponding group in ACT, okay? So as you can see, there's nothing here, okay? There's nothing in any of them in case you think I'm playing a shell game here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to our web page. Okay. And now I'm going to type in Chris Huffman, Chris at keystroke.com, which is an invalid email, but it's recognized in the database. KQC 416-499-3090. What product are you interested in? I'm going to go with ACT. Same day. Rate your love of ACT. 5. Are you an existing keystroke customer? Yes. And it is the best. You could also scroll with your mouse back and forth, okay? Call me quick. Troubling spelling. Okay, I'm gonna click on this and then submit. Now, at this point, you're going to see about a 5 to 10 second latency, and the reason is because at this point it's logging into the database, it's making another connection to the database, and we had a choice of putting the latency at the front end or the back end of the submission, but we put it at the back end. So when you don't want people waiting for the page to load. So in this case, waiting for the submission after they've completed it, they're going to be a little bit more patient. So then here you can just close the window. And let's see, I'll go to my email, and as you can see, I got a submission from Chris Huffman. So you're notified immediately of this. And I'm just going to go here. And now I bring this over to the screen, and you can now see that Chris Huffman has been added to the group. I'm just going to actually go to the trouble, since I have delete these other ones to avoid confusion. I've been beta testing this extensively. Okay, so then let's go back, go to Link2Forms, and here's quote request, and then he has entered this in immediately. Now, if I want to see what the history looks like based on his submission, take a look at this. So here's Chris Huffman, and here's all of his answers, and they're all written to history, and now they're reportable, okay? And I can act on them. So think about what's happened. Someone has submitted a form requesting service, requesting a quote in this case. I got an email instantly. They got added into a group that I can follow up with, not just today, but let's say I want to check once a week, I can go back and follow up to everyone. And I can create mailing groups. And because they're using groups, I can actually add them to additional marketing campaigns that are triggered automatically when they're added to the group. Okay. That is what I wanted to cover today, and I need to leave Billy enough time to go through and explain how some of the how to set up Act Connect, which it's fine if you're a hosted customer or you're on SwiftPage SaaS, the XCRM SaaS. But if you are an on-premise customer, you're a desktop user, and you're self-hosted, then it may be a little tricky to understand how you can benefit from the API. Well, the good news is SwiftPage has a product called Act Connect Link, and it's easy to install and easy to set up. But in order to demystify it, I've asked Billy to come in and do the presentation today. So Billy, I'm going to get you unmuted, and I'm going to make you the presenter. But before, I'm going to just keep the mic for a minute longer and ask Vic to see if there's any questions.
No, there's no questions in the chat, but if you do have a question, you can unmute yourself to ask the question, but please mute yourself right afterwards again. So feel free to unmute yourself as well.
Okay, Billy, take it away.
All right, so I've just shared the Keystroke CA screen. Are you seeing that?
Yep.
Perfect. So the reason I'm coming here first is kind of one of the things that Ken was saying earlier is if you are a hosted customer or a SaaS customer, we already have tools to show you what that API URL is. Now, the link to events, the link to calendar, all of these products, including every single API-based add-on not only we create, but ones that are created by Act Software directly or other partners, they all need 4 pieces of information. And that is actually relevant here because on our own website under the KQC customer tools, when you go to the Act Web API tester, it's going to ask you for those same 4 pieces of information. So I'm an Act user. I've got my Act database up here for your edification. This is the Act 2020 demo. This is the one that came with Act. And we're going to fill out these 4 pieces of information. So here's Chris Huffman. I've added a password to Chris here because I want to keep my demo database secure. The Act 2020 demo is the name of the database, and the web API URL is, well, what is it? And as a user that's a one-man shop, I may not understand what that is. And so let's kind of take a moment. I'm not going to discuss too much what API is, but I'd like to kind of say, how do I get this API URL? Well, since you're an Act subscriber, inside Act, there is a system called Act Connect, and this will allow you to generate an API URL, and this will open up a small tunnel to the Act Connect link service, and will generate that URL for you to put in the test or put into all of our apps or any other apps that you get that are API enabled. So under Act Connect on the right-hand side, there's here on step 2, it says find your Act Connect URL at the top of this screen. Well, there's an Act Connect URL up here. So it says otherwise you want to install it. So you click get it here, and it's going to open up in Internet Explorer, everybody's favorite browser. If you scroll down, you'll have a choice of installing either V18 or 19 or V20 and later. Now, before I click on either one of those, I do want to show you in Chrome, if it does open up in any browser that's not Internet Explorer, and you go to click on a link, there's a chance it's just going to flash at you and not do anything. I just want to let you know that if it's not Internet Explorer, you just see a flash, you'll have to right-click on that link and click Save Link As. That's because the the file isn't being delivered securely. But to save some time, I went ahead and I've downloaded this already. So I'm just going to start the installer. So this is the file that's downloaded. It's just Act Connect Link setup. And you don't even have to close Act for this. But I'm going to accept the agreement and we're going to go through the install together. Now, as I stated earlier, this does create a tunnel to a service. And that tunnel you may want to contact if you have an IT representative. We may have to contact them just to make sure they've opened up that port. And all that information on those ports can be found in the firewall and antivirus KB over at help.act.com. So the installation's finishing up right now. It does take just a minute to finish up as it's installing a system called node.js. And that's it. Now, I haven't closed out of Act, but what I am going to do is I'm going to hit F5 on my keyboard to refresh. And you'll see at the top of the page, there's a new section. And right here, it gives the new API URL that was assigned to me. So if I click right here to copy this URL to my clipboard, if we head back over into the API tester, as long as everything works out okay, as soon as I hit submit, it should tell me that everything's good. And there it is. Logged into the web API successfully, your credentials are correct. So that's how you as a regular premium user can get that API URL. Now you can plug this into all of the products that Ken showed earlier. You can plug it into some of our others. So we recently released a free version of Handheld Contact that you can use that same API URL and get your data for your contacts directly, or any other API-driven add-on or application that's created by another publisher. And that's it.
All right,
Thank you very much. So as you can see, this is accessible to hosted customers, SaaS customers, and desktop customers alike. What we found is that a lot of people just were, too scared. It just seemed like it was technically out of reach for them. Well, you just saw Billy run an installer and then copy something to the clipboard. And then suddenly he had an API address that he can use for this. Now, there's a couple of practical realities that you should be mindful of. You don't want to set this up on a laptop. You don't want to set it up on a computer that's going to have, heavy power management that's going to, go to sleep every 5 minutes. You're going to want to have it on a computer, a regular computer, Windows 10 computer, that is just running consistently, because the service has to connect obviously to the internet on a consistent basis. But aside from that, it's as simple as you just saw Billy demonstrate it. And if this is accessible to you, all the API tools are accessible to you. So the link to calendar, the link to contact. I'm just going to take back the, let's see, I'll make myself the presenter. Okay, and then I'll share my screen. Okay, why is my screen not coming in here? Okay, there it is. Okay, so now let's pull up a browser. Okay, we'll go to eStroke.ca. And a recent addition that we added to the homepage is Act CRM SaaS compatible add-ons, which is basically all of our API tools. So as you can see, Link to Calendar, Act for Mail. This is basically the API version of our very popular Act for Outlook. And when I say very popular, I mean the most popular Act add-on of all time. Thousands and thousands have been sold. The Web Planner, which is an online project management tool that now tightly integrates with Act. Okay, opt-in manager for harvesting your opt-in permissions and harvesting and validating your email, your database. So it will actually integrate with a Bright Verify. Okay, you still have to pay Bright Verify the fee for checking on a per email basis, which is like 1 penny per email, but you can actually have it go in and check your entire database to see which email addresses are valid, which ones aren't. Okay, then you've got Link to Events, Link2Forms, and you've got the Handheld Contact API and the free Handheld Contact Lite. okay? These are all tools that are now accessible to you as a user of the API, a user of the Act Web API. So whether you're hosted or on SaaS and getting that address from someone else, or a desktop user setting up in 1 minute like Billy did, all these programs are equally accessible to you. So I hope that helps demystify it, because really one of the main themes of a lot of the campaigns you're going to hear us putting forward in the coming weeks and months is really stressing that the API is the secret weapon of ACT. You saw me complete a form and have the responses immediately recorded in ACT. There's nothing that you can do with the desktop product through, say, an SDK product that can write to the data that fast, least of all to a central hosted database. And this works with all of them. It works with local desktops, works with hosted, and it works with SaaS. So I hope that this helps not only showcase the features of the Link2Forms product, which we're really, really excited about, but also, demystifies a little bit the API technology. And with that, Vic, I'll just do a quick pulse check to see if there's any additional questions.
No questions at this time.
Fantastic. So we're coming up right to the top of the hour. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. We booked just an hour. So thank you very much. This session is being recorded, and we will be posting it on our website. If you're curious to see where we post our recordings, it's very simple. You scroll down. Here's our keystroke training videos, and it will be down towards the bottom. Okay. So with that, I'll thank everyone and let them get back to the day. Remember, this is an account-based product, and it only costs $10 a month billed annually, which I think you'll agree adds a significant value to your, your ACT CRM use. So thank you very much and have a great day.